Newmarket, and he has a few words for us.
Good evening. My Buddhist name is Dharma Sutta, and I'm an order member at Aryaloka Buddhist Center. Aryaloka has been part of the Newmarket community for 35 years. Aryaloka is part of an international movement, the Triratna Buddhist Order. Aryaloka has aspired to create an embodiment of what is best in our humanity. We are a community that cherishes life, awareness, kindness, compassion, and freedom. I am humbled and grateful to be here as part of this Newmarket community gathering, bringing attention to the rampant racism and injustice that plagues our country in the midst of these unprecedented times. 2,500 years ago, the Buddha wandered India teaching the Dharma. His message was revolutionary, even radical. He spoke quite strongly against the racism of his time, which was the caste system. The caste system was and is a deeply held belief that the station in life that you were born into defines you for the rest of your life, and no amount of personal transformation will change that. If you were born into a lower caste, that was your lot in life. This system in many ways echoes the plight of people of color in our country today. The Buddha believed and taught that all human beings have the potential for enlightenment, and no one was to be excluded from his spiritual community. The Buddha taught and practiced kindness, compassion, and generosity. His teachings and wisdom, which have much in common with many spiritual traditions, leads to freedom from suffering. Suffering, which is a human condition that we're all part of. With all of the hatred, fear, and anger rampant in our nation, it is particularly challenging to not be drawn into our own mental states of hatred, fear, and anger. As Buddhists, we practice a particular meditation called the Metta-bhavana, the cultivation of loving kindness. This practice helps us to cultivate feelings of loving kindness, not just towards those that we find it easy to like or love, but towards those we find most challenging. The practice of loving kindness meditation helps us to take what we have cultivated on the meditation cushion out into our everyday lives, so we may treat all we encounter, no matter how different they appear to us to be, with kindness, compassion, and generosity. The truth of Buddhism is, despite our perception of differences, we are all of one humanity. Although my heart is heavy in the face of the suffering happening in our country, I also feel hope. Hope because all of you have come together to speak out against a great injustice in a civil and peaceful manner. Look for the beauty in all of us and all around us, but do not shy away from the suffering of our fellow human beings. This is true compassion. Let me leave you with a quote from the Dhammapada, one of the oldest Buddhist texts. Hatred never ceases hatred. Only love ceases hatred. This is an ancient and timeless law. Namaste, everybody.
Thank you, Barry, and thank you for helping us to see what we have in common, even in our differences. And love is the word. So thank you very much. I'd like to introduce and ask to come forward our town manager, Steve Fournier.
Thank you, Patty. Good evening, everyone. I want to express to you all how horrified I am with the senseless murder of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, and many others. I know that a vast portion of people in our country live their day-to-day lives in fear that something similar could happen to them. I may know, but I don't understand. Let's be honest. The last thing you want is a lecture by a person who looks like me and who's had my life experiences. I bet it's definitely a lecture about equality. I cannot comprehend what many people go through. It's not the time for me to lecture. It's the time for me and for others to listen. We need to listen to your experiences, your fears, your grieving, your rage, and your hurt. I promise I will listen, and I promise I'll learn. Many right now doubt our system of justice, and I understand why. We as a community, as a country, and as a people need to work for fairness and ensure that equal justice is for all. We just all need to love and care for one another. Nonetheless, we also need to work to understand one another. We need to move forward together and mend together as one. Thank you all.
Thank you, Steve. And as I introduce Kyle True, our police chief here in Newmarket, I want to let you all know we have water here on the picnic table. We're casual. If you need a drink, please come help yourself. It's really hot out here, so please make yourself at home to water.
Thank you, Pastor Patty. First, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today. It is very heartening to see these faces out here today. I didn't write a speech. I'm going to speak from my heart. It works for me when I speak from my heart. I'm going to say some things. A good friend of mine told me a few years ago it's okay to be uncomfortable when we speak to each other about race. And you're going to hear from that man in a few minutes. I'm saddened, I'm hurting, I'm embarrassed, and I'm angry about what we witnessed last week in Minneapolis. It was 1,400 miles away. And what we saw was humanity at its worst. That is not what we represent. The four individuals who tarnished their badge, tarnished their oath, and went against every principle that we teach our young police officers and we train our police officers. If you look out in the crowd today, you're going to see the entire Newmarket Police Department here. None of them were called in. None of them were ordered in. They're here because they care about this community. They love this community, they're a part of this community, and they wanted to be here in solidarity with the community. And for that, I'm thankful. I'm extremely proud of the inclusiveness we've built in my time here in Newmarket. I give my predecessor, Kevin Sear, a lot of credit for starting it. I hope when I leave here, somebody else will keep it going. We have a lot of work to do. I'm extremely proud of the law enforcement and community relations that we have, but we can always do better. I'm going to challenge all law enforcement throughout the country right now. If you watch the video of George Floyd being murdered and you could breathe, turn your badge in. If you could stand there and witness that unacceptable use of police force and let that man die, turn your badge in. And it's 2020, officers. It's not taboo to say that Black Lives Matter. Thank you.
Kyle. And next, I'd like to invite forward
guys for coming. Like the chief said, it's really nice to see everybody here. I can be honest and say that I wasn't going to come to this event originally, just because of where I stand with everything that's going on in the world right now. Being an African American and being a police officer, I can't speak for the rest of the ones in the world, but for me right now, I feel like I'm in a void space by myself. I got one side of the world that hates the other side of the world, and I'm stuck like in the middle of it right now. Okay, so I wasn't gonna come here originally, but I spoke with my chief, and the words that he gave to me, much like the words he presented you guys with today, motivated me to come here today. So real quick, I just want to talk about equality like everybody else has been talking about. To me, equality and fairness and right and wrong is when I go to one restaurant and get bad service, I don't go to the next restaurant and treat those people ill-manneredly like it's their fault what I experienced the first time happened, okay? So when we talk about law enforcement and community community policing, it's a blend of these things, okay? It's a blend of right and wrong, and it's the ability to notice all these things. So we don't treat anybody out here, I can say that wholeheartedly, none of these officers out here would treat anybody with any sort of disrespect, okay? If we experience one person that has a bad day, we don't go to the next call with the same mindset from the last call, all right? We open our minds, we all feed off of each other. We're not afraid to pull each other to the side and say, hey, you should probably take a second, I'll go handle that situation for you. Because we're human beings, we're not robots, we're not machines, we're human beings, okay? We go home every night, and when we have a bad day, we vent to our spouses, our significant others, our children, our brothers, our sisters, and our family, okay? Because we're not robots, we're people, all right? I understand that there's been a huge injustice in this world. There has been a huge injustice, and I'm absolutely disgusted by it, all right? But it doesn't call for people to create the us against them mentality, because once we do that, humanity is gone forever, all right? We have a huge pandemic going on in the midst of all this stuff, all right, where we have to literally be distanced from one another. But the second we say it's us against them and every man for themselves, this world is over and we're all gonna die alone. And it's gonna be brutal. So the next time you feel like you think you know everything about law enforcement, or the next time a law enforcement officer approaches you, you know, I'm not saying it goes one way. There are bad apples out there. We exist. They exist in service. They exist in financial industries. They exist in real estate. They're everywhere. We have bad apples. But the second you cast a shadow from one bad apple to the rest of the orchard, it's over. You might as well light a fire. All right? When I look out, I don't see a bunch of white people protesting against or standing for something that they know nothing about. I don't know what your struggle is. I don't know what your struggle is. I don't know what your struggle is, okay? But I don't see a bunch of white people here, okay? I see a bunch of people who are standing for something together. I see a bunch of people who are here because they all can agree that something wrong was done and we need to do something about it. And that is probably going to be my last point. I have family members and friends that I follow on social media that follow me, and the things that I've seen them say about law enforcement and the things that I've seen them say just in general, it's like, you guys know that I follow you, right? We follow each other. We went to high school together. We went to a family cookout together. Like, you're my family and you're my friends. So I look on, I have to delete my social media now because I look and I see the disgusting things that people are saying about my colleagues whom they know none of these people. They've never met them. All right, if anyone here feels like Newmarket Police is full of whatever corrupt or racist individual, you should probably just leave the town, because it's not. These people, I would die for. I would die for them in a heartbeat, and they would do the same for me. They would do the same for all of you. Okay, so the us against them mentality, the inequalities, the injustices, just standing by and letting someone do something that's wrong, or even when you see something wrong happening, you decide to take your phone out and start recording instead of intervening and making something right happen. You know, let's put the phone down for a second and let's help out, okay? So just remember, we're human beings just like you guys. We go home, or we want to go home every day. Our job is literally to make sure that you guys get to go home and stay home and be with your loved ones. But at the end of the day, we're looking for that same goal. But we're not obligated to it. You know, we swore an oath to defend, protect, and serve. Okay, and that's what we all intend to do. But it's a community. We are you. Okay, when we take this uniform off, we are citizens of Newmarket as well. When Lieutenant Jordan and Lieutenant Bodette take their uniforms off, they live in this town. Okay, they have gone from protecting you to now being a part of the protected. So there's no us against them. We are all one. We are all equal. We are all human beings. We all make mistakes, and we all need to learn from them. Thank you.
I'd like to invite forward Rogers Johnson, and he is the president of the New Hampshire chapter of the NAACP and the leader of the New Hampshire Council of Inclusion and Diversity.
You know, I wrote some words down, although, to be more than honest, I'm not so sure I can add anything that hasn't been said already. These individuals are eloquent in the delivery, passionate in their speech, and heartfelt in terms of what they feel. In many ways, really superfluous. There's not a thing I could say that add anything that they have said, and I applaud them for their courage. Let me read this. You know, I'm a product of the 60s. For most of you, all that really means is that I'm old. The events that have taken place over the last few weeks seem like deja vu all over again. This happened in the 60s, this happened in the 70s, this happened in the 80s. And here we are again. I wondered, now based on what you have seen, which is unfortunately the actual murder of a human being live on television, do you know what we mean when we say there's really two systems of justice? One for white America and one for black America? Did it take a videotape to make that clear? And what do we do to prevent it? You know, it wasn't really supposed to be this way. After the Civil Rights era, we thought that we would really overcome this. And yet we find ourselves here again. You know, we told ourselves that this was going to be better. Or was it all a lie? As a black man, I can not allow myself to think that the act of murder seen by so many people really represents the collective whole of the police force. There's no way that that's the case. And I have strived for the last 4 years, Kyle will tell you, to form a relationship between the NAACP here in the Seacoast and the police departments, because I know that if anything were to happen, it would be these individuals who will be in there with us. We have to work together, and we have tried to have that happen. Most people aren't really aware that we've been trying to work that way. But there's something else that you all need to do. You need to help us. We need education. We need to educate the masses of what it's like to be a black person in America. But I ask you to take the next step. Not only educate yourselves, educate your children so they know what it's like to live in a diverse society. You know, when they leave New Hampshire, and they will, anywhere they go is going to be more diverse than here. Even if they go to the University of New Hampshire. But the first time they experience diversity shouldn't be on a college campus with a 265-pound, 6'5" black man from Newark, Delaware, who happens to be a star defensive tackle. Perhaps you should train your children to deal with this scenario, because the first time they go into that situation may not be the best time to learn about diversity. But we need to take it further than there. We need to begin to start the process of telling your educators that they need diversity training. Tell your administrators they need diversity training. Tell your police department. Tell everyone that we need to do this on a regular basis because everyone needs this education. Because if you educate people, the better they're going to be able to deal with the scenarios that come up. And if they can deal with that, then we're going to get better. You know, the process of hate against hate only multiplies hate. We need to overcome this. And the easiest way to overcome this is to think about who we are as a group of people. We're not all a separate race. We are all part of the human race. You know, again, a person I remember back in the 60s, his name was Jack Kennedy. Yeah, I'm old. He said once, we all inhabit this same small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all bleed red blood. And we all cherish our children. We need to remember that. We need to act on that. Because in the end, all we have is each other. I hope we can work to make that happen. I'm going to. Come join me. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to open up the microphone to anyone in the community who might like to share a story or a feeling or a thought or a reflection. We want to invite you forward. And you can be 3 feet away from the mic, just like I am. It's a surround mic, so.
Patty, I would like to share a story.
Welcome. And I'll just ask you when you come forward to just introduce yourself. Thank you.
It took a lot for me to come up here. My name is Christina Curtum. I arrived here in 1990 from Washington, D.C. for graduate school. I substitute taught a class on family and culture, and I was appalled to learn that not one of my students had ever even seen a black person. Obviously, it affects me to this day. It is such a disadvantage. I felt sorry for the students. If this was not the real world. That's what I wanted to share. You've missed out on learning how to interact with diversity. I did all my life, and it was wonderful. Thank you.
so glad to have accidentally driven by tonight to see my own adopted community coming together like this. I'm the third generation of my family to accidentally end up in Newmarket. I have an older brother, he's like a billion years older than me, that graduated from UNH in the early 80s, and a nephew a few years younger than me that graduated from UNH in the 90s, and they both solidified their lifelong partner relationships here. You know, my brother and his new wife came here to finish their educations. My nephew met his current wife here. So when my current husband said he wasn't going to leave New Hampshire and move to Boston, and we started looking at houses and, apartments in Newmarket, I thought, could be good luck for us. And it has been. When I was watching the news lately as police departments and protesters and the National Guard have been able to gain a little more control over the rioters and looters, there are more, young, I guess you'd call them millennials or Gen Zs, getting interviewed by reporters, and so many young black people are saying, I was a child when Trayvon Martin was killed, and you hear these names that you remember from the last decade or so, and you realize how long ago it was. It seems. Well, for me, I remember when Rodney King was brutalized by police, and someone was secretly videotaping it from like a very far distance away. So I'm old. That was, early 90s. I just graduated college, and I couldn't understand why so many in the press were predicting riots. I was like, well, not that the anger wouldn't be justified, but I thought they're not giving people enough credit. But, after the police officers were let off, there were riots, but in the aftermath, the press sort of dissected it, and I remember one magazine article in which the reporter said, so when I wanted to figure out where to go to film the riots that were coming, I asked the police force, and they said, check the liquor stores. And I don't mean to denigrate the amount of anger out there, but I think there are more people that want to see real structural change and peace and justice than there are people determined to be destructive. My best friend lives in St. Paul, and she's an epileptic, and the second night of the riots, I called her, and first the pharmacy where she gets her medications was burned down. And then she discovered none of the chain pharmacies were going to even open up, bit out of fear. I mean, during the day, when you won't expect rioters, they weren't going to be open. And then her favorite bookstore burned down. It was an independent bookstore. And then some of her activist friends posted video of white dudes with mysterious stacks of bricks next to them, gesturing towards windows. And I've been just happy to see that people's faith in each other seems to be winning. In the end, I hope that continues. And I want to thank the several police officers here today that spoke. My father and my brother were both in the service. It's a different brother. I have 5 brothers, so don't get me started. But my father fought in World War II. My brother was stationed stateside in Vietnam. I was the only member of my family raised and went to high school in an Air Force town. And I remember in the 80s listening to supposedly the whole military believes this. And I remember thinking something that one of the police officers mentioned today, they're not robots. The police are not robots. Service people are not robots. Black people are not robots. None of us are separated from our own humanity just because we happen to belong to one group or another most of the time.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Good afternoon. My name is Anders, and I would like to hopefully share a happy story. I come from Middlebury, Vermont, which is a small town in Vermont, which makes Newmarket look diverse. And when I grew up, one of my best friends' name was Eric Langrock, and he was the child of a prominent lawyer in town. He was smart, he was handsome, he was athletic, and he was also black. And he grew up alongside us from when we were small, all through elementary school, all through high school, and none of us had any concept of anything really being different with Eric. It just was not part of our upbringing or our thought process at all. And looking back on it, I just took our friendship for granted. We, played like any other friends. But with everything that's going on in the country now, certainly I value that friendship more than I did at the time. I look back at that situation in this small town in Vermont and feel very strongly that with the right kind of cultivation, the right kind of education, the right kind of upbringing, everybody can be like we were with our friend Eric Langrock, where really the color of your skin makes absolutely no difference in who you are and how you're treated in your community. And I think that we're a clear beacon, hopefully, that if that could be brought on a national level, we'd be in a much better world.
Anyone else? Welcome.
Hi everyone. My name is Ariel. I lived in Newmarket for 14 years. I moved here in 2004, and I moved out in 2015. I was born and raised in Massachusetts, and I moved to New Hampshire. I think my grandparents hoped that it'd be a better area to grow up in, and I 150% agree. Seeing all of you today makes me really happy. Somebody once asked me if I've ever had trouble growing up or feeling different because of the color of my skin, and naturally I told them no, but there are things that make me different from other people, and that's just something people have to understand. Once you've lived it, you don't know. And people need to be kind to one another, and just seeing the state of the world. It took a lot for me to come here today. And just be kind to one another. Thank you.
I think I speak for everyone here. It's killing me not to hug you right now. Other
originally from Memphis, Tennessee, born and raised. For those of you who don't get the context of that, Memphis is 60% black. We've dealt with a lot of issues over the years, and by the time I was born and growing up, it was a very normal thing to talk about issues of race with one another. I think probably it's a lot different from a lot of Northerners might think of it. But, and then as an adult, I moved all over the country, and I came here, and I can tell you that it was difficult getting used to New Hampshire, a culture shock kind of, but actually not that difficult because it's easy here. One of the hardest things about being here was me trying to get people to understand that the rest of the country wasn't as privileged and affluent, and we're lucky here. We don't have a huge problem because honestly, we have more money. That's kind of what it comes down to, in my opinion. With the events of the last week and a half, I know I'm speaking for everyone, and I genuinely mean everyone, that you can't listen, you can't watch a video of someone begging for their lives through breath that you can hear, you can feel that they can't take, all while it's being crushed out of them without having a visceral response. And so it's been very emotional for me, but not just that, that's all of us. But what I've seen with the protest is something that's kind of hit me personally because of my personal situation, and that is the protests themselves and this tension between, the people who want to burn it all down and the people who want to keep it peaceful. And it's kind of both, because what we're dealing with, ultimately, yes, it's a race issue, but it's not just a race issue. It is a people with power versus a people without power issue, and that is across the board. It's not just law enforcement. It's every part of our culture, whether it's law enforcement or the economy. It's the powerful versus the people who don't have power. And we're so entrenched in that we don't even think about it. We don't even question it most of the time, which is why it takes a week and a half and 1 million people going out to 380 towns protesting and burning things to get some kind of justice, even the very smallest bit of what should happen. But it's not just law enforcement, it's all of our culture. Power versus those who don't have power. It's the economy. When people start talking about why are people looting? Well, it's not just the law enforcement. These are the same people, white and black, who, got, their dentist took them for a ride, or their mechanic screwed them for $100,000 or whatever. It's the power versus the people who don't have power. And I'm really hoping that, all this confluence of events, the fact that we all had nothing else to do but stay at home and process this for once, because all the other shootings, we were all, going crazy, going to work, doing things, and like, oh my God, that's horrible. But then 15 minutes later, we're off trying to live, right? Now, we have a chance to process this and start waking up and changing not just law enforcement, but every aspect of how we think, our culture, everything, so that we no longer buy into this powerful versus powerless dynamic that we've not been questioning for so long. And so that's all I wanted to add to this. It's just much broader than just law enforcement or just race. I want everybody to take the precious time we've been given by this tragedy to really question it. And thank you.
Thank you for your words of wisdom. Anyone else? Yes, please come forward.
Hi everybody, my name is Pam, and I just want to add to what my friend there just said. I've only lived in Newmarket 2 years. Before that, I lived in Dallas, Texas. And 4 years ago, right about this time, my apartment was right across the street in downtown Dallas from the police station. I taught at a school named El Centro, and during that summer, there were a group of people who were engaged and enraged and marching and protesting and walking through the streets of Dallas to protest the senseless killings of Alton Sterling and Philando Castile and too many other names that had gone before that. And I think many of you remember that what happened during that march was a terrible another terrible senseless killing of 5 law enforcement officers, and it happened at the school where I taught. So for weeks and weeks after that, right across the street from my apartment at the police station, there was a massive memorial. There were flowers, and there were people whose hearts were breaking. And I think the city found itself in the place, officer, that you were talking about, where how do you hold 2 competing ideas in your heart at one time? How do you hold grief for the law enforcement officers who were killed that day, and grief for all of the people of color who've been killed over and over and over and over again in our country at the hands of law enforcement? And it was an interesting situation to be at that intersection for weeks and weeks and weeks, literally the intersection of the street where I lived and the intersection of those competing ideas. And as my heart is breaking again, as we see the events of the past week unfold, the question that keeps coming back to me, and I think you posed this so beautifully, what's different this time? How do we make this time different? How do we make this time the last time? And I don't know the answer to that, but I think unless we ask that question, and everybody asks that question, and we ask it with open hearts and open minds, that there will be another time like this, and another time like this, and our hearts will continue to break. And that's where I find myself right now, is asking that question, what's different this time? Sometimes when there just aren't words, that's all we can really do is sing. Another man done gone. You know it. Another man done gone. Another man done gone. Another man done gone. Another man done gone. Please join if you know it. Because we know his name. Oh, we know his name. Yes, we know his name. We know his name. George Floyd was his name. He had a long chain on. 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 They killed another man. They killed another man. They killed another man. They killed another man. We lost another man. Another man done gone. Another man done gone. Another man done gone. Another man done gone. Another man done gone.
appreciative of the people of color who've mustered the courage to come up and speak about this difficult subject. I just really appreciate it. I want to thank the people in the town and you, Pat, for stepping up and being seen. About 20 years ago, I was a town councilor at Newmarket. I don't know if people remember here, but there was an incident between a Caucasian man and a Laotian man, and the Laotian man died. And I asked the town to take a position on that, and they wouldn't. And to see you here, Steve, out is just, it's progress. And I held a vigil against violence at that time, and there were people who came who were a part of the town council, but it was unofficial. And to read what you wrote, Chief True, it actually moved me to tears, because it's important to say and be seen as a community, as a town, in an official capacity, not just as citizens. And I just want to say thank you. It's really, really important and meaningful.
Thank you for sharing that and for recognizing and honoring the progress we're making, while also reminding us that there's more to go and more to do. Would anyone else like to share tonight?
Coming over here.
Welcome. Sorry, I can't see everyone. Sun's in my eyes. Welcome.
My name's Gabrielle Santiago, and personally, I just think it's just heartbreaking to know that we're fighting for the same thing some of our grandparents fought for back in the 60s and 70s and whatnot. I mean, it's 2020, and it's heartbreaking to know that this is our country, and it's not just about George Floyd, it's about Tyrese West or Trayvon Martin or Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor. There's so many more that I can't even name. And we need to say their names, and we need to recognize that we need to become better, and we need justice. So that's all I have to say.
Really struck me as you just said that we're fighting for the same thing our grandparents fought for. We can do better. We will do better. Other thoughts anyone would like to share? We've heard some really important words today. Some heartfelt reflections and feelings. And more than anything, we've heard a call and a request, a challenge that's been put before us to do better, to take action in the way that we can, to educate ourselves and to help end racism in this country, to help eliminate the power struggle that Ellen spoke so eloquently to. It's hard to know what to do sometimes, but when I look around this place tonight, I know the wisdom is right here in the park with us. We do know what to do. If you don't know what to do, reach out to someone here. You can find me at the church, pastor@newmarketchurch.org. I'll help you. Reach out to Chief True. Reach out to one of the officers. Reach out to Steve Fournier. If you're not sure how to make a difference, we can help you make a difference. And together, we will do so much, only by sticking together. So I implore you to figure out your next step. With the help of God, we can be better. As we move to a close, I'd like to end our time with a prayer and a moment of silence for all those who have lost their lives. For George Floyd, and I invite you at this time of silence, if you have a name that you'd like to call out, you're welcome to do that.
Trayvon Martin.
I'd like to share with you a prayer for a heavy world as written by Caitlin Curtis. Holy and sacred one, this morning when we woke to your presence in and around us, we also woke to a heavy world. And in this world, we can't make sense of all the things that are wrong and should be made right. We cannot fathom that people are judged on the color of their skin, that lives are worth less because their pockets are empty, that violence is an everyday occurrence and it seems that no place is safe. So when we wake to the sunrise and know that you are still good, teach us what it means to seek goodness when the world is dark. Teach us what it means to live in grace, not just for ourselves, but for the collective whole. We have been individuals for far too long, and in that individualism, we've forgotten how to hold each other. We need to return again to a love that holds together community, a love based on the way we belong to each other. A return to our wholeness, based on compassion towards others. And in that returning, we find that you are always bringing us back. Not to a world in which we do not see color or class, but into a world in which we see it and believe that sacred love is the imprint on everyone and everything anyway. Amen.